I don't think it makes a lot of sense to go to a bunch of happy hours and pass out business cards and go shake hands. I think it makes sense to go find environments that you can contribute to and people that you can go give something back to that obviously are connected to that environment, ideally. That's the outside of that. And that's where you go invest your time. And over time, people start to see you as someone who adds value, someone they want to pull in. So when you need something or when you need help, you can make that phone call and they're going to be there for you.
All good? Tony, tell us who you are, where'd you go to school, where are you from, and a little bit about the field that you chose and why.
So my name is Tony Capasso. I'm from Winnipeg, Canada. Went to high school at Churchill High School, the Churchill Bulldogs, and made my way to the US, going to college and playing college soccer at Notre Dame. So that's what brought me to the US. And then I came here to Austin to coach, be an assistant for the women's soccer team at the University of Texas. So that's what brought me to Austin.
And tell me a little bit why the University of Texas was the best experience in your life.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. I mean, I can't think of a better way to spend your 20s if you're not going to be playing the sport than coaching, and coaching in what is essentially like a premier Fortune 500 company in terms of resources, ambition, all those things. And as it relates to the profession I ultimately chose past coaching, while everyone else was in their 20s, kind of working in boiler rooms, making cold calls, doing all that stuff, I was helping student athletes, compete for championships, be great on the field, but great off the field. So it kind of set a great foundation for player development, personnel development, personal development of people, while also aspiring to winning championships at the same time.
So then when was there a pivot into business? And then how did you decide, where in business you wanted to get started?
Yeah, coaching lifestyle is tough. I mean, it's really tough, right? So nights, weekends, holidays, when everyone else is off, you're basically on, right? You're on the recruiting trail several months out of the year. You inherit this large group of athletes into your family, and that's all an amazing thing and an amazing journey. But as you think about your own family, how you want to spend your own time, maybe things you want to experience in your own life, including where do you want to spend that time. The coaching lifestyle can also be very nomadic, right? Podunk U to little town before you become maybe a head coach, maybe in a place like Austin where you can have a more full semblance of the whole thing. So I sort of decided in my late 20s that it was time to think about where else I could make an impact, but maybe also have a slightly different lifestyle for my family. And that's why I chose to get into tech and specifically growth technology companies, right? Companies that are trying to find innovation, find ways to break open markets and create a lot of value for their shareholders, for the customers that they serve, and ultimately for their employees. So I sort of made a bet. It was like a 20-year bet. It was like, look, if I'm going to be in Austin, where's the place where I can plant my flag and grow, where I know this is going to be a gift that keeps on giving? And honestly, a technology community becomes that, right? Because you make relationships, you get a skill set, and you sort of become unstoppable. And I talk about that a lot with people that I manage over time or mentor, is what are the kinds of things that make you unstoppable? And some of that is wrapped around your skill set and what you know and what you develop. A lot of that is wrapped around your network and your community and what people learn about you, and then also the long-term prospects of where you're, choosing to spend your time. So for me, choosing the technology industry was obvious if I want to be in Austin long-term, and it ended up being a pretty good bet.
What were some of the specifics that you did early on that ended up setting you up for the opportunity for growth and success?
Well, I mean, truthfully, coming out of coaching, there was probably 2.5 years there of fumbling around a little bit, meaning trying to find my way and my path. And so I started as a financial advisor at a company called Legg Mason that got acquired by Citigroup, and quickly sort of saw those advisors and people in that industry that were 20, 30 years ahead of me. And I just didn't see myself being in that same place down the road, and didn't see that industry as speaking to me. I ran a nonprofit youth sports organization for a year as an executive director, loved that experience. And so it was sort of a bit of trial and error of trying to figure out what kind of environment would be best for me. And that's how I developed looking around, seeing technology as potentially that environment. And you and I have talked about this. It blends the best of sort of like understanding business, how to capitalize on opportunities around business and take those opportunities. But for me as a former athlete and coach, it also gave me the best opportunity to put some of those skills to work, some of that knowledge and background to work, so I could come into an environment like that. And the first day that I walked on the floor at Bizarre Voice, which is the first company that I started in tech, I looked around, I said, I know how to do this because I'm in a game here, right? I'm in a highly competitive environment, lots of people that are super passionate about achieving a goal for their customers, for the company, and work towards some big goals. And so it all felt like home in that regard. But I spent probably the first 2 or 3 years a lot of self-deprecating in meetings. I don't know, I'm just a soccer coach, but I think this, or I don't know, I'm just a soccer coach, but what about that? And it took me a while to shed that. I was a little bit of my security blanket is like, I don't really know this world, but I actually knew more than maybe I was giving myself credit for, looking back on it, or at least had more of the instincts, because those instincts had been developed at Texas, in these other competitive environments. So I've shed that a long time ago, but I probably carried that with me for the first couple of years.
You made the environment familiar to you by making it something that you have done your entire life. How important is that to find that one thing to where you can connect with to give you the confidence to compete in a new vertical?
Yeah. Well, on the first part of that dynamic, it's commonly known as imposter syndrome too, right? People walk into environments and feel like maybe they're not worthy, maybe they don't know what everyone else knows. Frankly, I felt that way at Notre Dame as a student. I came out of an immigrant Italian family that had immigrated to Canada. I was the first one to go to college in my family. And so I would look around the classroom and see what kids were contributing in the classroom or what grades they were getting. I was like, are these kids sleeping on these books? Like, how are they actually able to know all of this stuff? Well, it's because around their dinner table, their parents were CEOs or SVPs, and the conversation was different than around my dinner table. So I already had that experience in the college experience. And then I decided that was no different in the classroom than it was on the field. It was just time to compete, right? It was time to dig in and put the work in, do the work necessary. So I may have had to do more work. I may have to do different work. But as soon as I flipped that switch to go, no, this is actually the same dynamic as to how you be successful in the field, I can apply that to the classroom, right? So then fast forwarding to that imposter syndrome, there I am back again as the kid who hadn't lived in or the young professional who hadn't been in a tech environment, growth technology company, didn't know anything about software sales, didn't know whatever. So what I do, I just put my head down and studied, right? About every book I could get. I talked to every person in the company I could talk to. I have someone who's my first manager there where we have a good laugh about it now. He and I are peers now and actually work on projects together. I just copy every word he would say. I mean, we had a sales call where he would tell a story about his kids, and we were selling a particular product that had to do with the TVs that are on the back of headrests in cars. And on my next sales call, I would tell the story about my kids. And the TV.
You would tell the story about his kids.
About his kids, and somehow it comes out as my kids, and I don't even know it. But my point was I had to learn, and I had to learn from those people. And that's the other thing you learn in sport is one of the best ways to learn is to mimic, right, what you see. And so we become really great at mimicking, right? And that's actually a skill. So I applied that skill. And then I very quickly figured out, well, I actually don't have kids. I shouldn't tell the story that way. But at first, that's how it would come out because I was literally repeating verbatim what other people were saying. Matter of fact, I have interviews of like times when I was in high school where our football team won the state championship, or I was on the soccer field being interviewed for something. And oftentimes people will look back at those interviews and be like, how did you say things that way? And I was like, literally, I was watching what the seniors were doing, or I played professional soccer at 16, and I would watch what the senior guys were doing around the table and mimic it. So that's what happened in that environment. And then to your point on pulling on a thread and kind of finding, all of us know, and we get feedback from the world where people find value in us, in our energy, in what we contribute, because it's the things that people ask us to do more of, right? And whether or not we should continue to do more of that stuff, that's on us over time. But when you walk into a new environment, you already have some signal as to what you can contribute in that environment. So I very quickly went to, how can I lift other people up? How can I raise the energy? If I'm in a locker room here, how do I get the best out of other people? So I would do things like we would be in a forecast call, at the end of quarter. These are very common in software companies where everyone gets in a room, they all call their shot, and the CRO asks everybody to make their call. And I would call 200% of the number. And everyone would look around and be like, how's he gonna get 200%? But I wanted to be on the leaderboard and number one on the board. And I knew from sport that the best way to win was to take other people's will to compete away. So I would call a big number so people wouldn't come compete with me because I said, no, I have this territory, I have this space. But that's also a way of bringing the best out of people because I'm willing to put myself out there, willing to go after the big thing. So I found a way to calibrate that as well, sort of what's good about that and how do I get the best out of that? And then what about that do I need to leave behind? Because actually I'm not on the sports field anymore. And actually there's a better way to do it in this environment. So My best relationships now, 15 or 20 years later from making that transition, I still talk to those people all the time. We still have a good laugh. We had 2 lunches together, we had happy hours together because we were competing together and we brought the best out of each other.
First of all, that's amazing. Like the call your shot piece, taking the wheel away, just they don't even want to compete with. That's amazing. That's a little bit of like some 48 laws of power mental game right there.
But mostly an athlete would understand that.
Yeah, I get it.
My
100%.
first job is to take away your will to compete.
100%. That's part of the reason we trash talk. But it's true. But your resume, man, is first of all, it's very impressive. When you look at it though, and you look at what you've been able to accomplish over this time, chief revenue, chief business, venture partner. Like, there's this what looks like just straight line to success, right? Talk to me a little bit about 2 things, right? What does that road really look like? And then how do you keep going?
Yeah. So the thing that I didn't do along the way that, and this is something I try to coach other people to think about, is I didn't necessarily say, I want to go have this role, this title, this status. I had an idea of what kind of life I wanted to create, and that had more to do with, what kind of, resources I could have. Yeah, I want to make a good living, and well, in order to do that, what kind of skill set do I need to build to make that living I want to make? If companies are doing layoffs, I don't want to be the one getting laid off. How do I make myself so valuable in an environment that I'm never taken off the field, right? So it started with what are the dynamics I want in my life? I want some semblance of success and reward. I want some semblance of control, at least semblance of control, that I've actually done the things that put me in a position to stay on the field when that time comes. So I kind of viewed it as like, how do I make myself unstoppable career-wise, which to me was always have opportunity available when that opportunity is needed and if and when it's needed, or if and when I want to take it. So it was more about building a skill set that always put me in a position to win or to be successful or to contribute, right? Now, that's the question. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can't do that by going after a goal. You do that by lifting other people up. You do that by finding opportunity for other people. So to your point, for a decade before I became a venture partner in a venture firm, I would spend coffees with people, do whiteboard sessions, kind of give away my time and my energy to the point where people would start to beg me to pay me for that time or tell me you should be paid for this time. I said, no, I'm not ready yet. No, I'm not ready yet. No, it's not important right now. Because one, at the time I had a day job and that wasn't necessarily important, but I understood the value of planting seeds, understood the value of giving back first. And in some ways in doing that, you know that you're building up a lot of things that are gonna come back to you. Coming back to the higher level, it was never like, I want that person's job, I want that title, I want that status, I want that thing. I'm just gonna go beeline and get that, because along the way, you need people to want you to get that. You need people to support you to get that. And I needed to know, I needed to create an environment around me where I was worthy of that, right? And where people actually would support me in getting that. So it starts with contributing to other people, contributing to the environments. And then eventually what happens is you get pulled. So I call it the pull effect, essentially, versus a push effect. I don't believe that pushing your way into situations or into environments or into that you want is the best way to get the outcomes you want. I believe the best way to get the outcomes is to create so much demand for what you bring to the table that you get pulled into those situations. So an example is in a corporate environment, even a startup environment, a lot of people get really caught up in title and compensation. They really push the organization early. I want this title, I want this comp. And then you find that the body starts rejecting the organ. And you don't even know why. It's like, I don't want to give you this title. I don't want to give you this. I don't even know why. I like you. I think you have tons of potential. But the fact that you're pushing causes us to push back, And it's the same thing in the most basic frame of sales. The more you push someone to do something, the more they're likely to push back on that. So the way that I thought about it is how do I create a pull effect? I know the things that I want to achieve personally, but I can only create that pull effect by doing things for other people mostly. Like that's the best place to start. And then as you think about getting to the next level, the other part of this is being willing to put yourself in situations where you're stretched and you're challenged and where you have to produce your best work. And so it's kind of interesting because oftentimes I'll tell people who join organizations that I'm a part of, I only want you to join if your best work is in front of you and not behind you. Okay, I only want you to come if your best work is in front of you, not behind you. Okay, but here's a dirty little secret around that, is I have to have a challenge big enough to bring that out in you. So without that challenge big enough to bring it out in you, that won't happen anyway. So the things that you see on my trajectory and path are me putting myself in situations that are not situations I've been in before as a starting point, because by definition, if I've already done it before, why would I want to do it again? It's not going to create any more chapters of the book or layers on the painting is kind of the way I think about it. You know, a great painting ultimately has texture, has depth, and it has depth through layers, right? And those layers are pattern recognition that's developed over time, experiences that you get, and different experiences and challenges. So in my career, I've never been in the same industry twice. I've never been at the same size or stage of company twice, because my end goal was to be ultimately valuable to the people around me. So what's more valuable than someone who's seen every stage of company in several different industries? You could be valuable to spend 30 years in one industry, telecom, or 30 years in freight, shipping, or logistics. There is a depth to that that's worth a lot. But I thought my value could be pattern recognition and stitching those patterns for people across many things. And so now as a CEO of a startup, it's the one thing I haven't done. And I'm at a point in my career where I could just go operate a thing, make 5 times as much money as I'm going to make doing the thing, with a lot less risk, and probably a lot less work. But I'm not done. My best work is in front of me. It's not behind me. Even my own best work, right? So how do I ask that of somebody else if I'm not willing to ask that of myself, right? So that's why I'm in the situation I'm in.
You chased the challenge and you kept seeing where you could add value, even so much to the point of intentionally not asking for anything, even when you're lending your expertise to others, until it was, I'm assuming, look, we can't keep doing this. We have to give him something, right?
Yeah, and it becomes, just adding that to the mix made it such that you can start to naturally parse out what you're going to spend your time on and not, because you don't have infinite time. But I think you've brought up a really important thing, because make no mistake, I've had my stresses about, you look around and you get the FOMO. I have peers and colleagues and early teammates that you see they're getting exits in their companies, or they're getting outcomes, and you get that little anxiety, like am I going to get the outcome? And then you get a win, and that feels good, and then you get 2 or 3 losses, which I've been a part of, and then. But here's the thing I learned, in particular, I had a company that we spent a lot of time growing and building value in that company. That company got acquired. Everybody did very well with it, and I remember thinking to myself, at dinner with my wife, we were kind of talking about the email that I got, sort of talking about like what everyone in the company was going to get as a result of this value that we created as a team. And I thought, you know what? Why did I ever stress 1 minute about this? Like, it was always inevitable. I know it's inevitable. Why? Because you're putting in the work, you're putting yourself in the right situation. The chapter's already written, and this is not a fate, sort of the chapter's already written, or in that sense. Literally, that chapter is already sitting written out there if you put the right things in place. So you put the work in, you put yourself in the right position to be successful, and you give and contribute and add value where you are. How is the outcome not coming? Whatever version of that, because whatever version you're going to get is going to be plenty. It's going to be way more than you thought you would get. And so to your point, I don't know that I knew that, I could articulate that 10 or 15 years ago. But investing in the now, investing in the process, investing in the challenge. Look, what I did know is making myself unstoppable was the thing that was most important, because as an athlete, you realize that you have to be so good that you can't be taken off the field. Like you live and die by knowing that my job is to be so good that I can contribute to this thing, and I don't want to be on the sidelines. Like, I want to be in the game. And so I kind of lived with that, that motion. But through that, you end up building, a community and a skill set that ends up paying off. And then again, the story's already written. I'm like, why did I ever? So now, for sure today, I don't ever worry about any specific financial outcome. Again, along the way, I've worried about it. I've stressed on it. I've put it away. I've come back to it. And then I thought, why did I ever? It was always inevitable, right?
On this amazing journey, what I've noticed in a little bit of our research was your longest stop has been one that's still going on, ATX Venture Partners. Yeah. What's happening that's so special that it's allowed you to still not only feel like you're being fulfilled, but feel like you're comfortable in the value exchange of this place?
Yeah. So first of all, in terms of like where and how I spend my time, there's actually a way to think about this, even career-wise, and how you spend your time. So Reid Hoffman, who's one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, wrote a book. Cannot remember the name of this book. I wish I had it top of mind, but it talks about the different roles that people play in companies or situations. So you kind of have these emerging roles in companies where you're early in a company, you're coming in and you're spending 12 to 18 month stints trying, like you have folks at Kollective that every 12 or 18 months, they're playing a new role for you here, right? And they're getting promoted, they're trying a new thing, and it's not clear where they're gonna land, right? But they're experimenting. And then you have the second kind of role is really a transformational role. So this is a 2 to 5 year journey where your job is transformation, right? Like that's the role in a company. And there could be several transformations in a 2 to 5 year, 6 year period, meaning again, every 12 to 18 months, the new S curve hits on the business. And then you have foundational roles. So like a Ginny Rometty, who was the CEO of IBM, who spent 25 years at IBM before getting the CEO, she was foundational to IBM. She was part of the culture, part of the fabric. So my role in the universe is transformation. I know that. Like that's the energy I need to bring. That's the expertise that I bring. And now I'm moving into a role where I'm foundational because I am the founder and I am the one who ultimately will create all of the fabric of the thing. So as a starting point, as I think about how I spend my time, my job is transformation. And I have no problem with that because that's where value is created. And it takes a certain skill set, a certain energy, and a certain commitment to do that. So with ATX Venture Partners, spending 6 years so far with the firm, I have a different role I play there, which I'm a venture partner, so I help them evaluate investment opportunities. I help advise companies, and I'm sort of available for roundtables or speaking or running leadership in sessions, things like that. So that's a community that I'm invested in, and I'll be invested in that community for as long as they'll have me be part of that community. But my role in that community is not transformation, right? My role is this more contribution from the outside and going in. So I sort of play two roles in my life that I like playing. One is transformational roles that I take something from here to there. That's my job. And I know that that's my job. That might be 18 months. It might be 5.5 years, but there's a from and to. And in the world of technology, with how fast it's moving and the way that things can shift and change, it's not clear how long that's going to take or how many cracks you'll get at that, right? Now that I'm starting a company, this is the last thing I ever want to do because, again, I'm back to like living in the realm of revenue for enterprises that I've worked my whole career, but now I get to start a company to solely work on this problem because I want to do it from that vantage point now, right, as a founder. So sort of wrapping in both, this makes sense, is part of what you see from a resume is my job is transformation, and that's what I go in to do. And sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, but I also find opportunities around that to be more foundational in the community. And these are places where I plant my flag or I put down the kickstand where I say, this is a community I'm going to keep contributing to, but I don't need to pull anything out of it. I'm not pulling a paycheck necessarily or directly in a way, or I don't need to get anything out of it. It's more of what I can give it, put in. Yeah.
Then I want to continue there a little bit. Talk to me about stealth. What's the to and from specifically related to stealth?
Yeah. So what's on LinkedIn is that I'm CEO of Stealth, and that's just a wrapper for we're in stealth mode as a company. And so I'm building a company that's focused on helping enterprises more rapidly go find growth in and around their business and using technology and AI to go do that. We raised a pretty large round here at the end of the year that we haven't announced yet as an initial seed round. So we have investors involved, we have strategic angels, and we have a thesis for how we can go help enterprises go crack the code to find untapped, uncaptured revenue. So the balance that we're in is we're still in design partner mode with our customers. So we're trying to find exactly what the right product is that we want to build and bring to market more broadly. And so in doing so, there's strategic reasons why being a little bit more under the radar, not being so public about what we're doing is helpful. Right?
Then I love that. First of all, like, side note, I love hearing that that's stealth.
Yeah.
Like that's actually stealth. I love hearing that. I want to continue there. First thing that comes to mind is, what key factors do you believe have made investors trust and invest in your vision?
Yeah. So I think no matter what, if you want to get people to support you and back you, you have to be able to show up in a certain way, right? So you have to be someone that people trust, right? So someone who's going to invest in you with their dollars or their time, they want to know that they can trust that you are going to be a good steward of those resources or of that time, right? Even as a mentor, like I'm not going to spend time with you as a mentor if I know that ultimately you don't care enough to prepare before, you don't care enough to do something with it after. It's like you are a steward of that set of resources or time. And so as someone who's seeking support from investors, they have to be able to trust that I'm somebody who can do right by that investment. The other thing they have to believe is I have a degree of competency in an area or a domain that makes me uniquely qualified to go accomplish the thing. And the third thing that's wrapped around all this is I have to have a vision, I have to have belief, and I have to have conviction around not only what I see as possible, but my commitment to doing so, because ultimately that's what they're betting on, right? So they're betting on my competency around understanding the space and what we're working on. They're betting on my vision and my conviction to fulfilling that mission. And they're betting on the fact that in the end, they're not going to have to worry whether they can trust me to do right by the company and the stakeholders in the company. Now, at different stages, there's different set of things. So as you get a little bigger, well, then I assess the broader team, right? And not just one person, but a bigger team. Or I assess the data that I have available, which is, so I'm in an earliest stage where they're betting as much on the person and the idea than they're betting on anything else. But as things change and stages of companies change, you bet on maybe a broader set of criteria, but we can get to some of that.
So then how do you, that makes complete sense, first of all, but how do you decide where you're going to go? And what I mean by that is, how do you decide whether to approach angel investors, venture capitalists, or other funding sources?
Yeah. So really it's about what your objectives are and what you think the best path to achieving those objectives are. So there's also bootstrapping and all of that, where people maybe won't raise money, right? They'll bootstrap it directly with their own funds, or work full time during the day and moonlight and work on something because maybe in that situation they don't feel like they're ready to put capital to work, so it doesn't make sense. Because what would they do with the capital if they had it? They don't quite have enough, or maybe they don't believe that capital or those set of investors can actually give them any kind of strategic advantage on what they're doing. So then why raise it? So really. It's about the stage that you're in and what you're trying to accomplish. So one of the benefits of having, let's say, a set of angel investors that are less institutional is there's probably less demands, less sophistication around requirements around how you communicate what you're doing, how you spend time with them, right? It's a looser kind of engagement. But with that looser engagement comes less resources, less expertise, less engagement, right? So for me, it's all about where are we in what we're trying to create, and what's the best set of people and resources we can put around the table to get an unfair advantage, because that's what I want. I want an unfair advantage with my team directly and with the set of investors. And so sometimes, venture is the best path to do that. Sometimes it's angel. Like if you have a really killer angel investor who's one person who has an extremely deep network and skill set that can help you, get that person to write you a check to help you, right? It might be a more institutional approach. So does that make some sense?
It makes 100% sense. And it makes me want to jump right into my next question with what you feel comfortable sharing. What strategies do you use to identify and target the right investors for your business?
Yeah. So one, you really want investors who are aligned with your stage and where you are, right? Because I've learned this over time. So I've been in several environments where we've raised capital at different stages or size of company. And where it doesn't work out well is oftentimes where there's a mismatch between the expectation of that capital and those investors and the stage you are as a company. Because those investors have LPs that they're investing their money and they're fiduciaries of, and they have a thesis around the companies that they invest in and what the makeup of those companies should be in order to be relevant investments. So if you're earlier stage, but you're bringing a set of investors to the table that are used to investing later stage, there could be a mismatch in expectation, right? So one, you want to find someone who gets your stage and gets where your company is at. That's also where they're going to add the most value. So one, it's assessing that, right? And that's pretty clear, obviously, honestly, in the technology world, it becomes more and more clear where people tend to play and where they tend to want to create their expertise and create their value. So you can establish that. Then from there, what you're wanting to do is find, those people, because for the same reasons why I want an unfair advantage of what they're capable of sharing or creating for opportunity in the business, I also want to make sure these are people that we can work well together, right? That when times are tough. So I had an investor that I brought in recently into something that I'm working on that I did several reference calls for, and profusely the entrepreneurs that had taken funding from this particular investment group talked about when times were tough, when the chips were down, what this group did to really stand behind those companies and those people and really help them through those tough times. So that's not always easy to assess from the outside, and that's not always the case. And so really it's like right stage for where you are and understand that, right set of humans and integrity that's all around that. And then you really want the skill set, because in some cases you're doing more financial engineering. Let's say your play is to go roll up a set of companies that can make some bigger conglomerate. It's more of a financial play of how you raise capital and deploy that capital to bring these set of companies together. In other cases, you're creating something from nothing in technology, and it's pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Those are two very different situations. So if you have more of a financial investor helping you pull rabbits out of hats, very different than a financial investor that's going to help you take known things and stitch them together into a much more compelling, valuable thing. So it's getting clear on that.
It's not just about just taking available capital. It's making sure that this is an aligned partner with where your business is and where you're headed next, and potentially someone you can call on if shit hits the fan.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
Because it will.
When shit hits the fan.
I mean, that's the thing to be clear in all of this. Choppy waters are coming,
Yeah.
right? So as smooth as they are anywhere, they are coming.
Right.
That's really what you're playing for, is what you're going to do in those moments and what you're going to be in those moments, right?
And that's where the investors, they come in
Yeah.
with their expertise and network and everything else.
That's the only thing that's guaranteed. They're coming.
So then, how do you structure your pitch to make it both compelling and clear to potential investors?
Yeah.
And additionally, does that pitch change depending on who you're talking with?
Yeah. I think it does. Like I made a mistake in pitching to one investor where I didn't suss out in advance or didn't pick up all the clues of how structured this particular investor was and how much structure they needed. And I'd been in a few previous environments, just most recently, where the structure wasn't valued. And actually the lack of structure was actually more of an advantage, because it spoke to more of where we were as a company. And so one, yes, I mean, whoever you're pitching to or trying to inspire around your vision, you definitely want to assess, like, what do they need to know and understand to do that? Now, that can also be a signal of whether or not it's the right investor for that stage, because if you're in the stage of just being on a scratch pad on a napkin at Starbucks with your idea, it's very different than being at a stage where you have a 52-page slide deck with like 3 years of retention history on your product, right? So if someone's expecting that, and you're in that stage, then you already know there's a mismatch, right? But in terms of, I'll just talk about, again, I've been at different stages. Always, 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 it goes to the door of the team. Always, always, always. So again, how do you establish trust and credibility and commitment as a team that you're the right team to bet on? I don't know there's a stage that people don't necessarily look at that. Then there's obviously the vision, and do you understand your market, and do you have a way to compel those investors to understand the magnitude of the opportunity? Because make no mistake, they're investing for you for a return. So if there isn't much of a path to that return or a vision for how you might create that kind of value that would yield a return, it's hard for them to get excited about it. So one, you have to be able to share the vision of where you want to go, knowing that you're starting in a very skinny place. And then from there, ultimately, it comes down to, again, what stage you're at, how much data do you have or not have. And look, ultimately, the thing that I've always been rewarded for the most in these situations is being as straightforward as possible, let's call it. It's not even being honest or truthful, it's straightforward, right? This is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what we believe, and this is what we're gonna do to go get that. And that's, I think, refreshing of what people want. I think it's easy to get caught up in, I have to tell the flashiest story that I can tell. You better have passion, you better have conviction, you better have a story to tell, which is, but you have a vision for what you want to do. But like we talked about earlier, creating this pull effect versus the push effect, if you just double down too much on that, it could be a big push. Okay, yeah, I hear you, but tell me the downside. Tell me what you don't know. Tell me what you haven't learned yet. And if you can be vulnerable in those environments, this is what I don't know yet. Or this is where, let's say, opinions, strong opinions loosely held. Like, here's where we have some strong opinions that we believe is ultimately true. Here's where we hold them a little more loosely, and we're happy to be knocked off our chair and found to be wrong in our assumptions. That goes a long way, because that's someone you want to partner with over time that can share that, right?
I love that. Strong opinions, loosely held.
Yeah.
I'm writing that one down. That's the first time I've heard that, to
Yeah.
be honest. I'm writing that one down.
It's probably like a Jeff Bezos Amazon thing. To be honest with you.
So is it, if you care to share, is it
Yeah.
okay to, I'm assuming
Yeah.
that investor that you walked in with that wanted the more structure and the previous ones were kind of on a looser basis, that person decided to invest?
No, they didn't.
So
Yeah.
then that
Yeah.
leads me to what I have
Yeah.
for you next is just how do you handle rejection from investors and what have you learned from those experiences?
Look, it's tough to hear no, and it's tough to hear no when you're so convicted and believe that like it makes total sense, and why would anybody say no? So I think that's always tough. Rejection and hearing no in any sense is always tough, but you have to look at it as learning, right? Like you have to look at rejection and no as learning. Like, what did I learn from that? What did I take from that? And you got to move on and apply it. It's not unlike being in a game where, you might throw a pick. Someone might throw a pick with 30 seconds left on the clock, and those can be really tough rejections or really tough failures. But you have to quickly move to, okay, what did I learn from that? So what I did in that situation is I was grinding on it. Like I wasn't, because I wanted to win. I wanted to, this is top investor, someone I respect a ton, someone that I've been watching from afar for a long time. But I understood why they said no. I understood why it wasn't a fit. And so I had to quickly get to like, okay, get over the fact that it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Now, what are you taking from it? I thought to myself, you know what? You got a bit complacent because the way these other conversations had gone, you started to not pay attention to the details. And the detail was what that person was asking for and what that person needed. And that's what happened. I got a little lulled into like, well, it's been going so great. And this is the way it's been going. But no. Every situation, every new play is a new play. And there's something that you thought was happening last time that might be different this time,
Isn't it crazy how like taking it back to sport, taking it back to like sport, isn't it crazy how like winning creates complacency?
Yeah.
And you gotta like actively fight that.
Yes.
Like winning can be more detrimental than anything else.
Yeah. That nothing kills like success, as they say. And part of what it does is it can put you a little asleep at the wheel. So what that did is that recalibrated me to go, no, every conversation is different. What does that person need? And I need to know that going in. And I didn't listen to the clues because I'd been doing it a certain way and it'd been successful, right? Yeah.
That's, man, okay. Tony, I'll ask this one and I'll let you get out of here. Appreciate your time today. What role does networking play in successful fundraising? And how do you approach building those connections?
So I have this like love-hate relationship with the word networking. The Italian in me loves having a great network. That's just part of my upbringing and my culture that I grew up in. Because with a great network, a lot of things can get accomplished, a lot of things can get done. And I'll tell you a quick sidebar on this if it's relevant. We can cut it out if it's not. But I don't know if I ever told you this story, but in the early 2000s, I went for a comeback in soccer, and I went to Italy to go do a comeback. So my wife and I had sold everything, sold our cars, put everything in storage, and moved to Italy to do this comeback run. And I ended up getting a major injury, major blowout of my knee in this place. And so I'm 50 kilometers outside of Florence in Tuscany. I go down on the field. The team puts me on the stretcher on the side. They keep practicing, and they kind of think I'm kind of faking this injury. And I'm in shock. My body's in shock. I have a major knee blowout. And so I pick up my phone, and this is one of those Nokia brick phones, and I have 2 phone numbers to call in that phone. I have my wife at the time, who was in language school in Florence, and one other person that I met at the University of Texas. His name's Carlo Buzzicelli, who I had met. He was a apprentice to Dan Pfaff, who was the track coach at UT at the time, and he was living in Italy. He's Italian. And so when something happens in your life and you only have 2 phone numbers to call and one is not answering, like you realize why we're all connected in this world, like first and foremost, okay? Like that is a real moment. Today, if we drive out of here and you get a flat tire on I-35, you've got 1,000 numbers you can call on your phone. And we may never know what that feels like in Austin, right? In our current situation. But Carlo drove 4 hours to come get me, knees completely blown out, team's not really paying attention to the situation. He takes me to the hospital to get x-rays and crutches. He takes me to the pharmacia to get the drugs to kind of, painkillers and whatnot. And he's driving me over the hill back into Florence. And if you've ever been to Florence, there's one road in, right? Only one road. And my wife's waiting at the top of one road, my ex-wife at the time, to come get me. I said, Carlo, why are you doing this for me? I'm like, you barely know me. I just met you at UT. I'm making this comeback. my knee's blown out, I'm 4 hours away, and you came to come get me, and you did all this for me. He's like, Tony, the reason why I'm doing this for you is because I know that if I was in the same situation in Austin, you would do the same for me. And at that moment was like one of those moments where the seas part, the skies open, and you're like, I now understand why we're connected in this world. Because when you need something, when you're at your toughest or worst moment, like you need somebody to call and you need someone to be willing to show up. So you need to be that person so that someone else will show up for you. Because if you're not that person, it's not clear, right? Because we're kind of wired as humans to assess that, law of reciprocity in a sense. So my point is, when it comes to networking, business, and it comes back to what we talked about in terms of creating value in an environment or situation, I think about it as, again, coming back to creating this pull effect. Like, I know that for all of us to be successful in this community, let's say even at Kollective, we have to create a rising tide, right? We have to create a situation where we're giving before we're receiving, we're investing in people, we're trying to figure out how to help people. And it's amazing how the network then just shows up when you need something and you need to make that phone call. When you're in that toughest moment, you can make the call. So now when it comes to investing and investors and all of that, there's two sides to this equation. One, are you the person that the investors want to know? They want to get a relationship with, they want to pull you into their companies. You only get that by creating what we said at the very beginning, being unstoppable in terms of your knowledge, the experiences that you've built up, and your willingness to take risk and take challenges and give back to other people. So I think about it as like, how do you create a pull effect? Well, Naval Ravikant would say, build the best product in the world, and that network will emerge for you. Don't worry about going out to network, just build the best freaking thing, and that network will come to you. And I believe that. So part of building that best thing is what you are building and what you are about, what you contribute, what value you can bring. So, and then what will end up happening actually is it won't be the direct network that you have, it'll be the network of the direct network that you have. And that's where it really gets exponential. So ultimately, can you be that person that a select group of, and it only takes 4 or 5 or 6 of those people to be the person that they care about you, they want to invest in you, and they want you on their side because they know that you're the kind of person that they can call if they need a favor, they need some, which goes back to why I never took any compensation for doing things for a long, long time, because I didn't want that to be the basis of the relationship. I want it to be because I'm investing my time. Those opportunities emerge, because I will tell you the best situations, so of raising capital in terms of speed, simplicity of the process, and the quality of the investors came from relationships from that inner circle that we had that were trusting that universe. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to go to a bunch of happy hours and pass out business cards and go shake hands. I think it makes sense to go find environments that you can contribute to and people that you can go give something back to that obviously are connected to that environment, ideally. Let's say outside of that. And that's where you go invest your time. And over time, people start to see you as someone who adds value, someone they want to pull in. So when you need something or when you need help, you can make that phone call and they're going to be there for you. To me, that's what that is. And I'll tell you a real brief story. I actually started a young professionals organization in Austin called Catalyst 8. And this was an organization, this is after I came back from Italy and as I was making this transition into tech. And we brought together a group of young professionals who raised $1 million towards the building of the Long Center in Austin. And we did it by charging people like a membership to be part of this group. And we went and exposed this group to a set of the arts in Austin, like Reed Mechanicals on the east side and other art galleries and so on. And I remember thinking to myself in that environment, like, everybody's here for a reason. Now, ideally, the reason why we're here together is because we care about the arts in Austin. But I don't care if that's only 20 or 25% of why you're here. A lot of people are there to find a date, to find a business deal, to get a job. And that's totally fine. So I want to create an environment where there's a reason for us to come together. So what I'm basically getting at, can you find that environment where at least 25 or 30 or 50% of your motivation is to contribute back to that thing? If part of your other motivation is to expand your network, meet new people, find a date or a business deal, great. But how do you connect on the basis of where you're contributing and adding value, not there to take away? And those later chapters are already written. Like they're waiting for you to walk right into. But if you don't do the right action along the way, those words start to disappear on the page, But at every next set of right actions, another sentence is sort of written in that later chapter of where this is starting to pay off, right? In more significant ways even than what you get along the way.
Tony, thank you for
Cool.
the time.
All right, thank you guys.
Good.
Sorry I went.
Gracious, man.